with Walter Cronkite and Morton Dean in New York, Ed Rabel in Atlanta, Georgia, Richard Threlkeld in Saigon, Jim Cooper in San Diego, California, and Charles Kuralt on the road tonight in Oakland, California.
Good evening. Apollo 8 astronauts Borman, Lovell, and Anders, maintaining an almost perfect course, crossed the halfway point today in their long journey back from the moon. And about an hour after passing that unmarked milestone, more than 100,000 miles out in space, the astronauts presented their sixth and last in-flight telecast, showing even better Earth pictures than transmitted before. We hear first from Mission Control.
This view from Earth with a telephoto lens at some 97,000 nautical miles.
On the Earth here, so far out in space, I think I must have the feeling that the travelers in the old sailing ships used to have. We've gone on a very long voyage away from home, and now we're headed back. And I have that feeling of being proud of the trip, but still happy to be going back home and back to our home port. And that's what you're seeing right here.
Roger, Bill. We'll sure be glad to get you back, too.
This is Frank Borman. We've enjoyed the television shows, and we invite you to stay tuned in the future, because there'll be parts in Rendezvous in the Earth orbit, and of course there'll be television from the lunar surface itself in the not too far distant future. So until then, I guess this is the Apollo 8 crew signing off, and we'll see you back on the good Earth very soon.
Roger, Frank. Adios.
The astronauts are aiming to come down in the Pacific Ocean, almost 1,000 miles southwest of Hawaii, appropriately near Christmas Island. Splashdown is to occur at 10:51 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, although it will be before dawn in the recovery area. The astronauts probably will wait at least 45 minutes for first light before being picked up. Re-entry, as diagrammed here, is to be down a 28-mile wide corridor plotted through the sky, with the spacecraft plunging into the upper atmosphere at well over 24,000 miles an hour. The optimum route is a long, slanting descent down the center of the corridor, although the angle can vary up to 1 degree higher or lower. In a steeper re-entry, the spacecraft would be crushed or would burn up, killing its occupants. A shallower path would produce the effect of a stone skipping across a lake, with the spacecraft being deflected into space in an orbit so high as to make recovery doubtful. Although the risks are there, no one right now expects any trouble, because the remarkable Apollo 8 spacecraft is on course, on schedule. CBS News will provide continuous color coverage of the Apollo 8 return, splashdown, and recovery, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow.
My name is Byron Hedges, and I know a lot of you been asking how me and Mr. Benson got together. I first sampled Benson's rich tobacco blend by pure chance, and I knew I had to find him. Benson! Benson! Then one lucky day we met. Benson with his great tobacco, and me with the biggest idea since king size.
I can see it now. Hedges and Benson 100!
Of course, Benson saw it a little different.
This fine razor isn't made by Persona. It's made by a competitor. But to get the best shave with it, use the new electro-coated Persona blade. Maybe someday we'll make the best razor. But for now, we'll settle for the best blade, the electro-coated Persona.
The State Department disclosed today that Commander Lloyd Bucher, captain of the Pueblo, was wounded when North Korea captured his ship. Officials said he suffered shrapnel wounds in the legs during the attack, which also killed 1 crewman and wounded 3 others. And the Navy today made the most detailed denial so far that the ship ever entered North Korean waters. The Pueblo's executive officer, Lieutenant Edward Murphy, used the slides and charts at a news conference in San Diego as he flatly rejected the communist claim. And in Washington, Admiral Thomas Moorer made this statement.
As Chief of Naval Operations, I was aware of the orders under which the ship had sailed. I was confident that the commanding officer of Pueblo would not knowingly violate these orders. Some months ago, our government decided to make these sailing orders public. Still, some doubt has existed. We in the Navy had no doubts, for we had carefully studied the material which the North Koreans released publicly and which purported to prove the ship's violation of their claimed territorial waters. An analysis of this material uncovered a number of inconsistencies in the documents which further confirmed our official conclusion that the commanding officer had carried out his orders. So long as the crew was held captive, we could not release this analysis, without, of course, risking grave harm to the men and jeopardizing negotiations for their release.
The Navy has ordered the Pueblo crewmen to keep silent publicly about their experiences, but some of the tales have been made known by relatives. Jim Cooper of station KNXT asked Mrs. Benjamin Ellis of Los Angeles what she first noticed about her son, Seaman Stephen Paul Ellis.
Oh, the loss of weight and his eyes, the staring expression in his eyes. He wasn't the same boy. But I'm so grateful that he's here and he's alive. That's all that really matters.
What were the thoughts and expressions of your son in those few moments that you could speak with him during your reunion?
He hardly said anything. He cried. And, Mom, is this true? Mom, am I really here? It didn't seem as though he believed that he was on American soil.
What was the impression you got in talking with your son about the treatment in general that they had when they were prisoners for 11 months?
That these people are the most barbarous and inhumane creatures that exist on the face of the earth. Their treatment was inhumane in the respect, aside from physical beatings, that they would get warm occasionally and relent and ease up on the men and then come back worse than ever again. And this hot and cold effect is probably the worst mental sort of anguish a person can endure.
Sharon, what did your fiancé say about the mistreatment or beatings by the communist prison guards?
Well, he said that they were mistreated and beaten quite often if they didn't give them, things they wanted to know. He himself was only beaten once in the beginning, and he was due for it if they weren't released.
You're a fiancé. What are your matrimonial plans? Did you discuss them yesterday?
Well, yes, we decided last night. We talked to our priest at the chapel at the Naval Hospital, and he's going to help us get a dispensation so we can be married down here and all our shipmates can be there.
Do you know how soon that'll happen?
Within a couple of weeks, I hope.
Two Arab terrorists using submachine guns and hand grenades made a daring attack today against an Israeli Et al. Jetliner only minutes before the plane was to take off from the Athens airport. One of the 47 persons aboard the New York-bound El Al plane, one an Israeli citizen, was killed and two crew members were wounded. Greek police seized the two terrorists who said they were members of a Palestinian Arab commando unit in Lebanon.
Gleam toothpaste announces a major scientific discovery. Brushing. Brushing does a lot more for your teeth than not brushing. To get you to brush, Gleam makes what we believe is the best tasting toothpaste in America.
A $12 dress ruined.
No, it isn't. The stain barrier's been broken. Broken by brand new Tide XK. Only detergent with the XK enzyme.
The grape juice stain is gone. Tide XK outcleans my ordinary detergent by a mile. It's a miracle.
Break the stain barrier. Get new Tide XK with the XK enzyme. It cleans far beyond the reach of any regular detergent.
In Iowa today, the mental patient accused of abducting 10-year-old Pamela Powers surrendered to police, but the search for the girl continued. She disappeared from a Des Moines YMCA Christmas Eve, and the chief investigator in the search expressed doubt that she is still alive. The suspect, 24-year-old Anthony Williams, surrendered at Davenport, but refused to discuss the case. New York City, hard hit both by flu and cold weather, was declared in a state of peril today by health authorities as a result of a recently ended strike by fuel oil deliverers. Thousands of apartments and other buildings are without heat as a backlog of fuel demands on the Christmas holiday snow deliveries. Today, the city threatened action against companies and drivers who do not follow an emergency system of priority deliveries. Officials said some landlords who had enough oil for their buildings cut off the heat anyway and told tenants the supplies had run out. To make things worse, the city has run out of Hong Kong flu vaccine and won't get new supplies until next week. Similar situations are reported across the country. We have a report from Morton Dean.
Okay? Did you feel it?
No, I didn't.
Well, wonderful.
Hong Kong flu vaccine is available, but in very limited quantities. Most of what there is shipped to clinics and institutions for the care of the aged and chronically ill. Clearly, there will not be enough for all who want it, and this has raised questions about why the vaccine wasn't available earlier and in greater quantities. The process that concludes with the inoculation of a human being begins with a similar ceremony for a chicken egg, except that each egg is injected with live virus strains as the initial step towards producing the vaccine. By the time the Hong Kong variety of the flu reached the United States, it had been learned that the flu vaccines already on the market in preparation for the cold weather were ineffective in combating this new member of the flu family. Dr. Walter Dowdle of the National Center for Communicable Diseases was asked about criticism that the Hong Kong vaccine should have been available earlier.
Well, actually, Hong Kong flu really showed up in July, if I may say this. The virus is very quickly isolated, and the strains were sent to various countries, which we were one of the centers where it was sent to. The virus was shown in the laboratory to be different. Once it was shown to be different, the virus was disseminated to all the manufacturers. The manufacturers rushed into vaccine production as quickly as possible, but the virus had to be adapted so that it was operationally feasible to produce the vaccine. This was done. They had to gear up. They had to start finding eggs everywhere imaginable, and all this together takes some time.
One man who worked diligently on the development of the flu vaccine is Dr. Eugene Barclay of the Merck, Sharp, and Dome laboratories in West Point, Pennsylvania.
Well, unfortunately, the epidemic occurred relatively late in the year, and we did not get the actual strain until late in August. So normally we would have gotten at least 5 to 6 months lead time. In this instance, we had relatively no lead time. In addition to that, the unit here was shut down, having completed the regular flu vaccine sometime late in August also. It meant that we had to double our facilities, which meant that construction had to start. Eggs had to be ordered. Most of the egg suppliers had reduced their flocks considerably, and this requires a considerable amount of time, about at least 14 days lead time. Eggs were indeed scarce. We went as far west as Minnesota and Arkansas to get eggs. In addition to that, we needed more equipment to improve the capacity.
Several drug companies have been working 7 days a week in 24-hour shifts to produce the vaccine. Usually the production of flu vaccines is a seasonal thing, completed during the summertime well in advance of the winter season. But the Hong Kong variety is new and required a special effort. Doctors tell us that as bad as the epidemic now is, things are going to get worse. The Hong Kong flu epidemic will probably reach its peak in mid-January. By that time, most, if not all, of the 20.2 million doses of the flu vaccine will have been shipped to doctors' offices and to clinics. Probably not enough, though, everyone agrees, to meet the demand for it. Morton Dean, CBS News, West Point, Pennsylvania.
Democratic Congressman Morris Udall of Arizona today sought support to replace John McCormick of Massachusetts as Speaker of the House. Udall, the brother of the outgoing Secretary of Interior, declared his candidacy in a letter to Democratic colleagues. Congressional sources told Martin Negronsky, however, that McCormick has assured other party leaders in the House that he has enough votes to retain his post. Prices were higher on the New York Stock Exchange today in light post-Christmas trading. The volume was under 10 million shares. That's the lowest in more than 3 months. The exchange index gained 5 cents.
When someone has a cold or flu, a get well picture works wonders for the spirit. For the fever, you want the strongest fever fighter you can buy, aspirin. Get Bayer aspirin because Bayer is 100% aspirin, and aspirin is the strongest fever fighter you can buy. You see, a get well picture and Bayer aspirin, they work wonders.
Here's an important word from Bayer in case the flu epidemic hits your home. When the flu strikes, doctors and public health officials urge you to follow these 3 steps. Rest in bed, drink plenty of fluids, and take aspirin to reduce the fever and relieve the aches. So get Bayer aspirin now. Bayer is 100% aspirin, the world's best aspirin. And aspirin is what doctors and public health officials recommend. For the pains and fever of a cold or flu, Bayer works wonders.
In Paris, representatives of both North Vietnam and the National Liberation Front demanded again today that the expanded Vietnam talks begin immediately, saying the United States would have to take full responsibility for any further delay. In their first joint statement, the Communists insisted that the U.S. and South Vietnam delegations sit down at a circular table for the talks, a move the Allies so far have rejected. In another development, the chief NLF negotiator, Tram Bue Kim, promised again that those 3 U.S. servicemen held by the Viet Cong will be freed, that only the details of their release have yet to be worked out. Shortly after the Christmas Day ceasefire ended in Vietnam, sharp fighting broke out between U.S. air cavalrymen and North Vietnamese regulars about 60 miles northwest of Saigon. 53 communists were killed in that action. There were no American casualties. The Air Force disclosed today that it's now using surplus 10,000-pound bombs, the biggest ever produced, to clear ground for instant helicopter landing strips in the jungle. The latest weekly casualty figures released in Saigon show the lowest number of U.S. combat deaths in 5 weeks, but 151 Americans were killed and 838 wounded since the previous list was issued. The South Vietnamese reported 202 of its new men killed, a slight increase, and communist deaths were put at 2,118. The ugliness of war is all too apparent in South Vietnam, and perhaps those who suffer most are the children. But in Saigon, there's a unique hospital to help South Vietnamese children. Richard Threlkeld reports.
This is the day the villagers of Can Gio have been waiting for. The day the American doctor has come to take the ugly children away and make them beautiful. That is what the American captain who lives here has told them, and he is a man to be trusted. Patiently, the doctor explains that he cannot take all the children, only a few, those who cannot speak or sing.
This fellow we can make maybe not Clark Gable, but pretty close to it. When we fix the lip, we do one side at a time, and then we wait till around 18 months before we do the palate.
Then the helicopter comes to fly the chosen ones to Saigon, where the doctors will treat them. One day, the helicopter will bring them back, and it is said each child will have a new face. The children come to this hospital, children marred by accident of war or accident of birth. This is a very special hospital, the only one of its kind in Vietnam for very special patients, the handicapped children of Vietnam. It is a unique institution, if only because it is the cleanest hospital in Vietnam. The only patients are Vietnamese children who can benefit from the most advanced techniques in plastic surgery. The doctors and the nurses are all volunteers, working for a fraction of the salary they could earn in the States. The hospital is a converted office building. Most of the equipment has been donated or borrowed. The money to run it comes from a variety of sources: American Aid, the Vietnamese Ministry of Health, and the Children's Medical Relief Fund, a non-profit corporation in New York. The wards are full of children with lip and mouth deformities, cleft palates, drooping eyelids, as well as war casualties. Some of these children might have lived all their lives with these defects, all for want of a simple operation. The man who created this special hospital is one of the most respected plastic surgeons in the world, Dr. Isaac Kaplan.
What was there that brought you here? Well, I can only actually speak for myself, and if I may say so, when I was asked to come here, I simply felt that being a doctor and having taken a Hippocratic oath, I couldn't refuse to do a job which I considered important and to come to a place and treat people that needed my care.
Tran Thuy Hoang is 8 years old. 3 years ago, her arm was burned when her house caught fire during a battle with the Viet Cong near Saigon. This is how it healed. It takes only 45 minutes in the operating room to repair. Part of the work is done by a Vietnamese woman physician, training to do this sort of surgery when the Americans leave. An incision in the arm, the useless flesh trimmed away, the arm straightened, and a layer of skin borrowed from the child's hip to cover the open wound. In a few weeks, the bandages will come off, and Tran Thuy Hoang will have 2 good arms instead of 1. In 6 months, working 18 hours a day, the doctors and nurses have mended 160 children. Surgery and healing takes time, and the wards are always full. That is only a tiny fraction of the children in Vietnam who need this surgery. Each day, the admitting room is clogged with scores of deformed children and hopeful parents, most of whom must be turned away. Christmas was coming on, and the hospital was short of toys. So, from God knows where, some American supply officer found a few dozen stockings crammed with playthings. The youngsters may keep them till they leave, and they must give the gifts to the new patients. But when they leave, these children will be whole again. They will make friends who will not pity or deride them. They will marry and have children of their own. They will be normal, and that is the most precious gift of all. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, Saigon.
U.S. Marines at Quang Tri, just below Vietnam's demilitarized zone, have killed a 9-foot, 400-pound tiger, which has been marauding their lonely outpost for the past several weeks. The animal was tracked after it had clawed and tried to drag off a young Marine who was asleep in his tent. The Marine, who was not identified, is reported in satisfactory condition.
I often tell people who are tired because of iron poor blood that Geritol is made especially to help them. The great majority of tired people don't feel that way because of iron poor blood, and Geritol won't help them. Still, if you're one of the small minority with iron poor blood, it could be why you're tired, and Geritol can help you. Just 2 Geritol tablets contain twice the iron in a pound of calf's liver. Geritol iron works in your bloodstream, carrying strength throughout your body. For iron-poor, tired blood, try Geritol. Feel stronger fast in a week or 2. Geritol is America's #1 tonic. It really works. Try it. This is Ralph Bellamy. Your health.
Honey, come to bed. It's late.
I can't sleep.
When simple tension keeps you awake, take Sominex as directed for 100% safe sleep.
Take Sominex tonight and sleep safe and restful. Sleep, sleep, sleep.
Take 2 Sominex tablets and sleep.
There are all kinds of car buffs, but Charles Kuralt, on the road in California, found a group that loves a car almost nobody else would have. Charles?
It's been an awfully big year for losers. The Tigers won the series, Nixon won the presidency, and you may now add to the list of things you never thought you'd see in '68, a parade of Edsels in Oakland, California. Waterloo, Dunkirk, the Little Bighorn, and the Bay of Pigs were great victories, of course, compared to the Edsel. Compared to the Edsel, Alf Landon, Mussolini, and the New York Mets are big winners. Edsel dealers lost thousands, and the Ford Motor Company lost scores of millions of dollars back in '58, '59, and '60, until they gave up on the Edsel. The public gave up on it from the beginning. Yet, here are dozens of Edsels, they couldn't be anything else, pulling into the parking lot of the Oakland Coliseum, their owners pleased as punch.
This was one of the 60 convertibles. They hadn't made too many of it. I bought it originally new, and was trying to keep it in new condition. And it runs real well. I am certainly enjoying it, and it's kind of an exclusive model.
Well, I would say so, my goodness.
The back seat has held up real well, and I've carried kids, dogs, cats, everything in the car, and it still looks just like it did the day I got it. Better than just about 8 years ago.
This is a rally of the Edsel Owners Club.
Now's your chance to become one of the lucky ones. Join the Edsel Owners Club today.
The president, so help me, is a hospital dietitian whose parents named him Edsel Henry Ford. and who has obviously decided to go ahead and make the best of it. I hesitate to suggest it, but it has been suggested that the Edsel is not the most beautiful of automobiles.
This is hard to say. I believe the car was thought to be ugly when it came out, but something's happened in the meantime. Whether we have changed our viewpoints of what beauty really is, I couldn't say. But the Edsel is truly either the most ugly car or the most beautiful car you've ever seen. And I love my ugly, beautiful beast.
How much does an Edsel go for on the market these days?
There are all sorts of prices on Edsel. Some of them are very expensive. We have one in our area that is very low mileage and is for sale for $3,000. But there are Edsels available for $25 and $30.
The Edsel Owners Club will never become a threat to the Masons or the Moose. There are only some 43,000 Edsels still around, and many of those are taxis in Tijuana or something like that. But what the Edsel Owners Club lacks in numbers, it makes up for in passion. For the same reason, presumably, that Philadelphia football fans still cheer for the Eagles, Edsel owners become sloppy with emotion when talking about their cars. When you come right down to it, isn't this a little ridiculous? All these people devoted to a car that's so out of date?
You know, there's nothing that I love better than have you say just that. Because here is a loser that suddenly has become a winner. You know, we're kind of we feel like we're in Dick Nixon's class. Here's a man that started out in the worst possible conditions, and suddenly he becomes the President of the United States. Here we come out with an Edsel. The worst thing that any dog on the market would have, you couldn't even give them away 3 years ago, or even 2 years ago, or even a year ago. And today, well, here's a car right in front of us, $5,000, and one sold a little while ago for $1,500 right here at this meet.
You don't really think the Edsel's coming back?
It's back. It's coming back. It's already back.
Watching all these people here, flanked by their Edsel Rangers, Citations, Pacers, and Corsairs, in raptured conversation, one cannot help proposing a coat of arms for their club. A horse-collar radiator grill rampant on a field of spare parts. Edsel Owners Club, it would say at the top of the shield, and at the bottom, the slogan, Misery Loves Company. Charles Kuralt, CBS News, Oakland, California.
That's the way we never thought it would be. Thursday, December 26, 1968. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
When you're upset, tense, nerves snap, and each mounting pressure may start the flow of excess acid in your stomach. Result, acid indigestion, heartburn, that burning sensation. But Rolaids, with its exclusive buffering compound, has thousands of absorbent particles. Each consumes 47 times its weight in excess stomach acid, gives fast, lasting relief. Rolaids consumes 47 times its weight in excess stomach acid.
We put an onion, a woman, and a room full of people together to see what can happen.
Hi, Mother. Dad. Hi, Bill.
But now, Clorettes. Only Clorettes combines the breath protectors chlorophyll and Retsin. This time.
Excuse me. Of course.
Sweetheart, it's a wonderful party.
The difference is Clorettes. Clorettes help stop bad breath fast, and you can prove it with people.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, in color, this has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.